The planet was dying. From the observation tower of the last standing city, Elder Counselor watched the sky burn. Warships hung in orbit like dark clouds, raining fire upon his world. The ocean, once blue and peaceful, now reflected the orange glow of 1,000 fires. His people, they were being hunted to extinction. They were a gentle species. They had evolved in the warm waters of over millions of years. Their skin was smooth and pale blue, their eyes large and kind. They had never known war until the Dominion found them. They were harvesters. They traveled from world to world, taking what they wanted. And what they wanted from them was their bodies, their organs, their very essence for biological experiments. Closed his large eyes and felt despair wash over him like a cold wave. The fleet was gone. Their orbital stations were destroyed. Their cities burned. Billions of his people had already died, and billions more would follow. A young officer named swam up to him through the flooded corridors of the tower. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "Elder, the communication array is damaged, but we can send one more signal. One broadcast before the system fails completely." Turn to her. Hope was a dangerous thing. It could keep you alive, but it could also break you when it failed. Still, he had to try. "Send a distress call to the Galactic Coalition," he ordered. "Tell them everything. Our location, our population, the forces. Beg them to send help." Nodded and hurried away. Returned his gaze to the burning sky. The coalition was far away, and they were slow to act. Politics, bureaucracy, endless debates. By the time they decided to help, there would be no left to save. But he had to try, for his people, for the children hiding in underwater caves, for the future that might never come. The signal was sent. It burst from the damaged array in a flash of energy, carrying the hopes and prayers of an entire species. It was meant to travel toward coalition space, toward safety, toward salvation. But the array was broken. The signal went the wrong way. It traveled through the darkness of space for weeks, passing dead stars and empty worlds. It crossed regions of the galaxy that no known species had explored. And finally, it reached a small yellow sun with 8 planets circling around it. The third planet was blue and green, covered in water and life. The planet was called Earth. On a cold night in South Korea, Lieutenant Park sat alone in the monitoring station. The facility was built on a mountain, far from city lights, where the sky was clear and the stars were bright. Had worked here for 3 years, listening to the silence of space. It was quiet work, sometimes boring, but she loved it. She loved the idea that somewhere out there, among all those stars, there might be someone else. Tonight she was drinking coffee and reading a book when her computer made a sound she had never heard before. An alert, a signal. Put down her book and looked at the screen. Her heart began to beat faster. The signal was not from any satellite. It was not from any known source. It came from outside the solar system. She ran diagnostics. She checked for errors. She called her supervisor, Captain Minyu, who arrived 20 minutes later with sleep still in his eyes. "This better be important," he said. "It's 3 in the morning." "Sir, look at this." She pointed at the screen. "This signal is not natural. It has pattern, structure. It's a message." Minyu leaned closer. His tired expression changed to shock. "That's impossible." "I know, sir, but it's real." They spent the next hour analyzing the signal. It was damaged, incomplete, but certain parts were clear. There were coordinates, numbers that looked like population data, and one phrase that repeated over and over in a pattern that seemed desperate, urgent, pleading. Worked through the night with the translation team. By morning, they had a rough interpretation of the repeated phrase. "Please help us, we are dying." The message traveled up the chain of command faster than anything in human history. Within days, it reached the United Earth Defense Council, the organization that governed humanity's new ventures into space. Humans had only discovered faster-than-light travel 5 years ago. They had explored nearby star systems but never found life. Now, life had found them. The council debated. Some wanted to ignore the signal. It could be a trap, they said. Others argued that humanity was not ready for contact with alien civilizations, but one voice rose above the others. Commander stood before the council with a calm face and steady eyes. He was 52 years old, with gray at his temples and scars on his hands. He had fought in the last war, the terrible conflict that had nearly destroyed humanity 20 years ago. He had lost his wife and daughter in the bombing of. He had every reason to be bitter, to be tired, to walk away from duty. But he was still standing, still fighting, still hopping. "We spent centuries killing each other," said to the council. "We burned our cities, we poisoned our oceans, we nearly ended our own species, but we survived, we rebuilt, we reached the stars, and now someone is asking for our help." He paused, letting his words settle in the silent room. "We can ignore this signal. We can protect ourselves, hide from the universe, and pretend we never heard it. But what kind of species would that make us? What did we survive for, if not to become something better?" He looked at each council member in turn. "I volunteer to lead a reconnaissance mission. Give me a ship and a crew. Let us find out who sent this message. And if they truly need help, let us give it to them." The debate continued for 2 more days. In the end, the council approved the mission. The ship chosen was the Resolve, a frigate designed for exploration and defense. 200 crew members volunteered, each knowing they might never return. Among them was Dr. Lee, a scientist who had dreamed of alien life since childhood. There was Sergeant, a quiet soldier with gentle eyes and deadly hands. And there was Han, a young engineer who had helped design the ship's shields and who believed that technology could save anyone. As the Resolve prepared for launch, stood on the observation deck and looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, a species was dying. They had sent a cry for help into the darkness, hoping someone would hear. They had no idea that their signal had reached a world full of strange, stubborn, impossible creatures called humans. Creatures who, despite all their flaws, still believed in answering when someone called for help. The journey took 11 days. 11 days of traveling through the strange, twisted space that humans called hyperspace. 11 days of waiting, wondering, and preparing for something no human had ever experienced: contact with an alien species. Commander spent most of those days reading the reports, studying the signal, and trying to imagine what they would find. The coordinates pointed to a star system far from Earth, in a region of the galaxy that human probes had never reached. There was no way to know what was waiting for them. Dr. Lee spent her time in the science lab, surrounded by screens and data. She had studied biology her entire life, always hoping that one day she would discover life beyond Earth. Now that dream was about to come true, and she felt both excited and terrified. What would the aliens look like? How would they communicate? Would they be friendly or hostile? Sergeant spent his time in the training room. He ran. He lifted weights. He practiced combat drills with his team. He did not talk much, but everyone knew he was ready. His job was simple: protect the crew and complete the mission. He had done this many times before, but never against an unknown enemy. Han worked in the engine room, checking systems and making small improvements. She was the youngest member of the senior staff, only 28 years old, but her mind was sharp and quick. She had designed the shield technology that protected the Resolve, and she trusted it completely. She just hoped it would be enough. On the 11th day, the ship dropped out of hyperspace. The first thing they saw was debris. Thousands of pieces of metal and rock floating in the darkness. The remains of stations, satellites, and ships, all destroyed. Beyond the debris, a planet hung in space, blue and beautiful like Earth. But this planet was covered in dark clouds of smoke, and orange fires burned across its surface. "My God," whispered, staring at the screen. His face was grim, scanned for life signs. The sensors worked for a long moment. Then the results appeared. millions of life forms on the planet's surface, mostly concentrated in deep water and underground shelters. And in orbit, surrounding the wounded world like hungry animals, 47 alien warships. "Those must be the attackers," said, "the ones killing this species." "Should we retreat, Commander?" asked the helmsman, his voice nervous. Looked at the burning planet. Somewhere down there people were dying, people who had asked for help, people who had hoped someone would come. "No," he said, "we did not travel all this way to run. Open a channel to the planet's surface. Let them know we are here." The communication officer worked quickly. Within minutes, a connection was established. A face appeared on the screen, and every human on the bridge fell silent. The alien was unlike anything they had imagined. Its skin was smooth and pale blue, with hints of silver where the light touched it. Its eyes were large, round, and filled with an emotion that needed no translation: desperation. Behind the alien, they could see water-filled corridors and flickering lights. "Who are you?" the alien asked. The translation software turned its sounds into human words, rough but understandable. "You are not Coalition. We do not know your species." Stood straight and spoke clearly. "My name is, I am the commander of the Earthship Resolve. We received your distress signal. We have come to help." The alien stared at him for a long moment. Its large eyes blinked slowly. "Earth, we do not know this world. We have never heard of your kind." "We are new to space travel," admitted. "Your signal reached us by accident, but the message was clear. You are dying and you need help, so we came." There was a long silence. Then the alien spoke again, and there was something like wonder in its voice. "You came from an unknown world across the galaxy, for strangers you have never met." "Yes." The alien lowered its head. When it looked up again, there was water in its eyes, tears perhaps, or something like them. "I am Elder Counselor of the people. The Dominion has been destroying our world for 30 cycles. Our fleet is gone. Our defenses are broken. We are all that remain." Felt a weight settle in his chest. 30 cycles. However long that was, it had been too long. These people had been suffering while the galaxy ignored them. "The ships in orbit," he said, "are they?" "Yes, 47 vessels. They circle our world, destroying any who try to escape, harvesting those they capture. We cannot fight them. We have nothing left." Turned to his tactical officer. "Analysis." The officer studied the readings. "Their ships are larger than ours, Commander, more heavily armed. We are by a factor of 10. Stepped forward. "Commander, if we engage, we will be destroyed." Knew this. He had known it since they arrived. One ship against 47. It was suicide. But he also knew something else. He knew what it felt like to be alone, to be afraid, to watch everything you loved burn while no one came to help. He had felt that during the last war, when the bombs fell and his family died. He would not let others feel that pain, not if he could help it. He said, "What is the status of our shields?" Checked her tablet. "Full strength, Commander. We can take several direct hits before failure." "Good." Turned back to the screen to his hopeful, frightened face. "Elder, we cannot defeat the fleet alone, but we can buy you time. Evacuate your people to the deepest shelters. Protect your children. Hide everyone you can. And pray that our message reaches Earth before we fall." His eyes widened. "You would fight for us. You would die for us. We are strangers. We have nothing to offer you." Smiled a small, sad smile. "You sent a message into the darkness, hoping someone would answer. Someone did. That is enough." He ended the transmission and turned to his crew. Every face was watching him. Every eye was waiting for his orders. "I will not order anyone to stay," he said. "What we are about to do may kill us all. If anyone wants to leave, there is no shame in it." No one moved. No one spoke, crossed his arms and nodded, took a deep breath and stood, gripped her tablet and smiled nervously. Felt pride swell in his chest. These were good people, brave people, human beings at their finest. Then let us show what humanity is made of, he said. Battle stations. The Resolve turned toward the enemy fleet. 200 humans against an empire of killers. One small ship against an armada of destruction. In the shadows of the flagship, Overlord watched the unknown vessel approach. He was amused. This tiny ship, barely worth noticing, was flying toward his fleet like a moth toward fire. Destroy it, he ordered, bored. Then continue the harvest. A single cruiser broke formation and moved to intercept the human ship. Its weapons powered up, ready to end this foolish interruption. But as the cruiser closed the distance, something strange happened. The small ship did not run. It did not surrender. Instead, it opened fire. And for the first time in centuries, the Dominion learned what it meant to underestimate a stranger. The cruiser was 3 times the size of the Resolve. It had weapons that could melt asteroids and shields that could stop plasma storms. Its crew numbered over 1,000 soldiers, each one bred for war and trained to kill. It lasted 4 minutes. The Resolve moved like nothing they had ever seen. Human ships, it turned out, were designed by a species that had spent its entire history fighting itself. Every war, every battle, every conflict had taught humanity new lessons about combat, and those lessons were built into every system, every weapon, every tactic the Resolve used. Shields absorbed the first barrage of fire, bending but not breaking. Before the cruiser could fire again, the Resolve had already moved, sliding sideways in a maneuver that no computer could predict. Human pilots did not fly like other species. They flew by instinct, by feeling, by the strange combination of fear and courage that made them who they were. The Resolve's weapons struck the cruiser in 3 places at once. Engine, weapons, bridge, precise, devastating. The cruiser broke apart in a bloom of fire and debris, and the fleet fell silent. On the flagship, Overlord stared at the tactical display. His purple eyes narrowed. A cruiser destroyed by a single unknown vessel. This was not possible. This was not how the universe worked. There were the hunters, not the hunted. Send 2 more ships, he ordered. I want that vessel captured. I want to know what species dares to challenge us. The 2 ships never returned. In the chaos of battle, while the Resolve danced between weapons and asteroid debris, Commander made a decision. They could not win this fight alone. They could not even survive it for long. But they could hurt the enemy. They could make the bleed. He called, "Prepare a boarding team." Raised an eyebrow, "Sir." One of those cruisers is damaged but not destroyed. Its engines are dead, but life support is still running. I want you to board it, take control of their systems, and download everything you can. Weapons, communications, ship designs, everything. Nodded slowly. This was insane. Boarding an enemy vessel in the middle of a battle with hundreds of soldiers waiting inside. But insane was what humans did best. "Give me 10 soldiers," said. "We will get it done." 15 minutes later, the boarding team launched. Their shuttle was small and fast, designed for exactly this kind of mission. It slipped through the chaos of the battle, dodging debris and weapons fire, and attached to the damaged cruiser like a tick on a beast. The airlock opened. Stepped inside first, his rifle raised, his eyes scanning the dark corridor. Behind him, his team moved in silence. They had trained for situations like this, though never against aliens. The first soldier appeared around a corner. It was tall, nearly 3 meters, with gray skin and 4 arms ending in sharp claws. Its eyes glowed red in the darkness, and it roared with fury as it charged. Shot it twice in the chest. It stumbled but did not fall. Bodies were tough, built for combat and survival, but humans had learned long ago that anything could die if you hit it enough times. Stepped forward and fired again, this time at the creature's head. It dropped. "Move," he ordered. "We don't have much time." The team pushed deeper into the ship. They fought hard, using their size and strength to overpower any enemy, but humans did not fight fair. They used grenades around corners. They set traps in doorways. They fought in ways they had never seen because humans had been fighting and killing for thousands of years, and they had learned every dirty trick the universe had to offer. One officer cornered a young human soldier named. It towered over her, claws raised, certain of victory, pulled a knife from her belt and drove it into the creature's leg. When it stumbled, she jumped onto its back and cut its throat. It fell, and she moved on without looking back. They began to understand something terrible. These small, soft creatures were not prey. They were predators, and they were very, very good at killing. Whilst Team fought through the cruiser, Doctor worked on the planet below. A shuttle had carried her and a medical team to a shelter, where thousands of refugees huddled in the underwater caves. They watched the humans with wonder and fear. These strange beings, with their hard skin and loud voices, moved through the shelter with purpose and energy. They set up medical equipment, handed out supplies, and began treating the wounded. Knelt beside a child whose arm was badly burned. The child looked at her with wide, frightened eyes. "It's okay," said softly, even though the child probably did not understand her words. "I'm going to help you. This might hurt a little, but you're going to be fine." She worked carefully, applying human medicine that she had adapted for biology. It was risky, experimental, but there was no other choice. The child whimpered but did not cry out. When finished, she wrapped the arm gently and smiled. "They're all better." The child reached out and touched its face. Its small fingers traced the lines of her eyes, her nose, her lips. Then it made a sound that somehow understood was laughter. An older approached. It was the elder who had spoken with Commander. "Why do you help us?" he asked. "You risk your lives, you fight an enemy that is not yours. Why?" Thought for a moment. It was a good question. She had asked herself the same thing during the long journey too. "Because we know what it is like to suffer," she said finally. "We know what it is like to lose everything. Our species nearly destroyed itself many times. War, disease, disaster. We survived, but barely. And we learned something from all that pain." "What did you learn?" "That no one should have to suffer alone. That when someone asks for help, you help them. Not because you will get something in return. Not because it is easy, but because it is right." Was silent for a long moment. Then he bowed his head in a gesture that understood was respect. "Your species is very strange," he said, "but I think perhaps you are also very good." Back on the cruiser's team reached the command center. The doors were locked, sealed tight against intruders. A normal team would have retreated, called for support, waited for better equipment. Pulled an explosive charge from his pack and attached it to the door. "Cover your ears," he said. The blast blew the doors inward. The command center was full of officers, all scrambling for weapons. His team moved in like water through cracks, each soldier taking a target, each shot precise and deadly. In 30 seconds, the room was theirs. Walked to the main computer and began downloading everything. Ship designs, fleet movements, communication codes. Everything that had humanity would now have too. As the download completed, one of his soldiers called out, "Sergeant, you need to see this." Looked at the screen his soldier indicated. It showed a list of worlds, planets that had harvested, species they had destroyed. The list was long, hundreds of worlds, billions of lives. And at the bottom of the list, a new entry, Earth. They had noticed them, and they were already planning to come. His jaw tightened. He saved the data, gathered his team, and headed back to the shuttle. The thought humanity was just another species to harvest. They had no idea what they had awakened. No idea at all. Overlord was not used to losing. In 300 years of command, he had conquered 62 worlds. He had destroyed species that dared to resist. He had built his reputation on blood and fear, and no one in the Dominion questioned his power. He was a legend, a monster, a god of destruction. And now, a single ship from an unknown world had killed 6 of his cruisers. He stood in the command center of his flagship, watching the battle unfold on the tactical display. The small human vessel was still alive, still fighting, still refusing to die. It moved through his fleet like a ghost, appearing in one place, striking hard, then vanishing before his ships could respond. His officers were afraid. He could see it in their eyes, smell it on their skin. Fear was spreading through his fleet like a disease. "Enough," growled. His voice echoed through the command center, silencing every whisper. "I will not be humiliated by primitives. Send a message to Dominion Command. Request reinforcements, all available ships." His communications officer hesitated. "Overlord, that will take time, and if we admit we need help against a single vessel." Crossed the room in 3 steps and grabbed the officer by the throat. He lifted the smaller off the ground and squeezed until he saw terror in those red eyes. "Send the message," said softly, "or I will send your body." The message was sent. On the resolve, alarm screamed. Ran her fingers across her console, checking damage reports and power levels. The ship was hurt, shields at 40%, 2 weapon arrays offline. Hull breaches on 3 decks, sealed but dangerous. "Commander," she called, "we cannot keep this up. The shields will fail within the hour." Nodded. He had known this was coming. They had done well, better than anyone could have expected, but one ship could not fight an empire forever. "How long until the reinforcements arrive?" he asked. The tactical officer checked the sensors. Based on their transmission patterns, approximately 3 days. 3 days, that was not much time, but it might be enough. Opened a channel to Earth. The signal would take hours to reach home, but he had to try. He had to let humanity know what was happening, what they had found, what was coming. "This is Commander of the UEDC Resolve," he said, speaking clearly into the recorder. "We have made first contact with a peaceful alien species called the... They are under attack by a hostile empire known as the Dominion. We have engaged the enemy and inflicted significant damage, but we are outnumbered and cannot hold for long." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "They are planning to target Earth. We have evidence that our planet is on their list of future harvests. This is not just about saving the... This is about protecting our home, our families, our future." He looked around the bridge at his crew. Had returned from the planet's surface, her clothes stained with blood, stood by the door, silent and steady as always, was still working, still trying to keep the ship alive. "We are not leaving," continued. "We came here to help and we will stay until the end. But if anyone can hear this message, if anyone can send reinforcements, please come. Humanity does not abandon its friends, and we will not abandon the..." He ended the recording and sent it into space. Then he turned to his crew. "We have 3 days," he said. "We need to use them well, focus on repairs, get the shields back to full strength, work with it to set up ground defenses. If the land troops, I want them to face resistance at every step." "And you, Commander?" asked. Smiled grimly. "I am going to teach the few more lessons about humans." The next 3 days were the longest of their lives. The Resolve could not fight the fleet directly, so used other tactics. He hid the ship among the moons and asteroids of the system, striking from unexpected angles, destroying supply ships and communication relays. Every attack made them more angry, more frustrated, more desperate. On the planet's surface, worked with soldiers to prepare defenses. They were not fighters by nature, but they learned quickly, taught them how to set traps, how to use the terrain, how to fight dirty. He did not tell them that these were lessons humanity had learned by killing each other. Some things were better left unsaid. Continued her medical work, saving lives one patient at a time. She trained healers to use human medicines, adapted treatments for their unique biology, and held the hands of those who were dying. She cried sometimes when no one was watching, but she kept working. Performed miracles with broken equipment. She repaired shields with parts from destroyed vessels. She improved weapon efficiency by rewriting software. She slept for only 2 hours each night, surviving on coffee and determination. An elder watched all of this with growing wonder. He had sent a message into the darkness, hoping for salvation. Instead, he had received something stranger and more precious. He had received humans, these strange, contradictory creatures who were both violent and gentle, both fierce and kind. They fought like demons and loved like angels. They made no sense, and yet they made perfect sense. On the morning of the third day, found standing alone on the observation deck of a shelter. The commander was looking at the sky, where ships still circled like vultures. "You have done so much for us," said, "but the reinforcements are coming. 40 more ships, perhaps more. You cannot win this battle." Did not turn around, probably not. Then why do you stay? Why do you not run? You could escape, return to your home, live your life. No one would blame you. Was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft. "I had a daughter once. She was 7 years old when she died. There was a war on our world and a bomb fell on our city. I was not there. I was fighting in another place, killing other humans. When I returned, there was nothing left. No home, no family, just ashes." Said nothing. He understood loss. His people understood it too well. "I spent years asking myself what the point was," continued. "Why survive? Why keep fighting? And then one day I realized the answer. I survived so that I could help others survive. I fight so that other children will not become ashes. That is my purpose. That is why I am here." He finally turned to face. There were tears on his cheeks, but his eyes were steady. "We are staying because that is who we are. We are humans, and we do not abandon people who need us." At that moment, the sensors on the Resolve detected a massive energy surge at the edge of the system. The reinforcements had arrived. 40 warships dropped out of hyperspace, joining the survivors of the original fleet. The sky was filled with enemies. Walked to the shuttle that would take him back to the Resolve. He paused at the door and looked back at. "Keep your people safe," he said. "We will hold them as long as we can." And then he was gone, flying back to his ship, back to his crew, back to the impossible fight. Watched the shuttle disappear into the sky. He did not know if the humans could win. He did not know if any of them would survive. But he knew one thing for certain. These humans were something special, something the galaxy had never seen before. And whatever happened next, the universe would never forget them. The Resolve was dying. Shields had failed an hour ago. The hull was torn open in a dozen places. Fires burned in the lower decks, and the life support systems were failing. Of the 200 crew members who had started this journey, 63 were dead, and many more were wounded. But they were still fighting. Commander stood on the bridge, blood running from a cut on his forehead. The tactical display showed the truth. 83 warships surrounded them, closing in for the kill. There was no escape, no miracle, no way out. "All weapons, continuous fire," ordered. "Make every shot count." The Resolve's remaining guns blazed, striking at the nearest vessels. They were doing damage, but it was not enough. It would never be enough. Was on her knees in the engine room, desperately trying to restart the main reactor. Her hands were burned, her face was covered in soot, but she would not stop. She could not stop. The ship needed power, and she would give it everything she had. Was in the cargo bay, where the wounded were being treated. He moved among the injured soldiers, offering words of encouragement, checking bandages, holding hands. He had always been a fighter, but now he was something else too. He was a comfort. Was on the communication console trying to boost their signal. If they were going to die, she wanted Earth to know. She wanted the message to reach home. She wanted humanity to remember what they had done here. On the flagship, Overlord watched the human ship with something close to respect. These creatures had fought harder than any species he had ever encountered. They had killed thousands of his soldiers, destroyed dozens of his ships, and refused to surrender even when all hope was lost. Part of him wanted to capture them, to study them, to understand what made them so dangerous. But a larger part of him, the part that had conquered 62 worlds, wanted them dead. All ships, he commanded. Focus fire on the enemy vessel, destroy it completely, leave nothing behind. 83 ships turned their weapons toward the Resolve. 83 ships prepared to fire. 83 ships waited for the order that would end humanity's first and last act of heroism. And then the sky tore open. The first ship that dropped out of hyperspace was the indomitable flagship of Admiral. It was massive, twice the size of any cruiser, bristling with weapons and armor. Behind it came 16 more vessels, each one built for war, each one crewed by humans who had volunteered for this mission. 17 ships against 83. The odds were still terrible, but to humans, terrible odds were just another Tuesday. Admiral sat in her command chair, looking at the battlefield with calm, steady eyes. She was 60 years old, with silver hair and a face marked by decades of hard work. She had been a fishing boat captain before the last war. She had learned to command warships the hard way, through blood and loss and sacrifice. Now she commanded the largest fleet humanity had ever sent beyond their solar system, and she had no intention of losing. "Open a channel to the flagship," she ordered, "all frequencies." Her communications officer, the channel opened and spoke. "This is Admiral of the United Earth Defense Council. You are attacking a world under human protection. You have 30 seconds to withdraw your forces. If you remain, you will be destroyed." On the flagship, Overlord heard the message and laughed. 17 ships threatening 83. These humans were insane. "Ignore them," he said. "Destroy the crippled vessel first, then we will deal with the newcomers." But as his ships began to fire, the human fleet moved. They did not move like any fleet had ever seen. They did not form neat lines or predictable patterns. They scattered, regrouped, struck from multiple directions at once. Their ships worked together in ways that seemed chaotic but were actually perfectly coordinated. They took risks that no sane commander would take, and somehow those risks paid off. The first cruiser exploded within minutes, then another, then 3 more. Commanded the battle like a conductor leading an orchestra. She saw patterns in the chaos, opportunities in the danger. She sent the Soul to flank the enemy left. She ordered the Defiance to draw fire away from the damaged Resolve. She pushed the Indomitable directly into the heart of the formation, daring them to stop her. On the Resolve watched the battle with tears in his eyes. They had come. Humanity had answered. His message had reached home and his people had responded. He called through the intercom, "Can you give me power?" A pause, then's voice, tired but determined. "I can give you 10 minutes, Commander, maybe less." "That is enough. Get everyone to the escape pods. We are abandoning ship." There was a moment of silence, then spoke, "Commander, what about you?" Looked at his bridge, at the place where he had fought and bled and refused to surrender. He loved this ship. He loved his crew. He loved what they had become in these terrible days. "I am going to do one last thing," he said. "Get everyone out. That is an order." He programmed a course into the navigation computer. The Resolve was dying, but it could still do one more thing. It could still hurt the enemy. He aimed the ship at the flagship. Overlord saw it coming. He saw the crippled human vessel turn toward his ship, saw the engines flare with their last breath of power. He understood what was happening, and for the first time in 300 years he felt fear. "Evasive action," he screamed. "Stop that ship." But it was too late. The Resolve struck the flagship at full speed, tearing through shields and armor, ripping through decks and corridors. The explosion was massive, a ball of fire that lit up the sky of like a second sun. Overlord died in that fire. His flagship died with him, and the fleet, suddenly without leadership, began to fall apart. Some ships tried to retreat, others surrendered, others fought on, only to be destroyed by the human fleet. Within 3 hours, the battle was over. On the planet's surface, Elder emerged from his shelter and looked at the sky. The ships were gone. The fires were fading. And in orbit, human vessels moved slowly, picking up survivors and debris. He fell to his knees and wept. The humans had won. Against impossible odds, against an empire of killers, against everything the universe had thrown at them. They had won. In the days that followed, the survivors gathered to mourn and celebrate. They had lost millions of their people, but they were alive. They were free. And they owed it all to the strange, stubborn, beautiful creatures from a distant world called Earth. Walked through the shelters, treating the last of the wounded. Helped children plant the first new trees in a forest that had been burned. Worked with engineers to repair water systems and power grids. They did not talk about the battle. They did not need to. At a memorial ceremony, Elder stood before the gathered crowds, both and human. He spoke of Commander, who had given his life to save strangers. He spoke of the 200 crew members of the Resolve, who had crossed the galaxy to answer a call for help. "We sent a message into the darkness," said, his voice carrying across the silent crowd. "We hoped someone would hear. We hoped someone would care, and someone did." He looked at Admiral, who stood among her officers with quiet dignity. "The humans came, they fought for us. They died for us, not for glory, not for reward, but because they believed it was right, because they believed that no one should suffer alone." He paused, and when he spoke again, there was wonder in his voice. "We asked the universe for salvation, and humanity answered." Word of the battle spread across the galaxy. The Galactic Coalition, who had ignored this distress calls, suddenly became very interested in this new species from the Orion Arm. They sent ambassadors, scientists, diplomats, all eager to learn about these humans. What they learned surprised them. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the fastest or the most advanced, but they had something that no other species had. They had heart. They formed connections with strangers. They fought for people they had never met. They refused to give up, even when all hope was lost. And when you sent an SOS into the void, hopping for salvation, they answered. Admiral returned to Earth as a hero, was promoted and given command of his own ship, became the lead engineer of the new defense fleet, continued her work as a doctor, traveling from world to world, healing the sick and comforting the dying. And they built a monument. It was a simple thing, a pillar of white stone overlooking the ocean that they loved. On the pillar were carved the names of every human who had fought for their world. At the top of the list was. Beneath his name was a single phrase, translated into both and human languages, words that would echo through the galaxy for centuries to come. "They came from nowhere, they owed us nothing, but when we called for help, humanity answered." And so they did, and so they always would.